Imagine you are a professional football player. The doctors say you're healthy, but then here are 9 football players who almost died. Iker Casillas is a legend. He won numerous titles and was in top physical condition. And yet, we almost lost him. It is May 1st, 2019, and Iker had been playing for Porto in Portugal for several years. And on this Wednesday, he was participating in the training. But then, while training, he suffered a heart attack. He was immediately rushed to the hospital and survived. 2 months after the heart attack, he made his comeback on the training ground, but he and the club were cautious and didn't want to rush things. And then on August 4th, 2020, the decision. He officially resigned. A sad day, but he was just happy to be alive. 23-year-old Fabrice Muamba also narrowly escaped death. It's March 2012. We are in the FA Cup match between Bolton and Tottenham Hotspurs. And Fabrice Muamba was overwhelmed. For 2 years, he had been a player at Bolton Wanderers. His childhood dream of becoming a professional football player had indeed come true. But in the 40th minute, the player collapsed. His heart stopped beating. The doctors immediately tried to revive him, but he didn't react. He was taken to an ambulance and was given dozens of shocks with a defibrillator, but his heart didn't start beating. Then, after 78 minutes, unbelievable, his heart started beating again. And then the good news, Muamba was alive. After a month, he was discharged from the hospital. He got a pacemaker and he was doing well. Some doctors even called this speedy recovery a medical miracle. On August 15th, 2012, Muamba announced that he was retiring from football, but he didn't want to turn his back on football altogether. He started to study sports journalism. And on November 8th, 2012, more than half a year after his collapse, a beautiful moment. He played 50 minutes in a friendly game at the stadium where he had collapsed a few months earlier. Becoming a professional football player, that's the dream for many. And for the Brazilian Thiago Silva, it became a reality. He played for the big clubs, he won trophies, he played for the national team, but he also narrowly escaped death. The Brazilian was bought by Porto in 2004, but was loaned to Moscow after a year. But there he had some problems. He got tired quickly and he had to cough a lot. The coaches were confused. They weren't sure if it had been a good idea to get the 20-year-old to their team. He was sent to the hospital for a checkup. And then came the shock. Thiago had tuberculosis, and the doctors told him that he was already in a very critical condition and that without treatment he would probably have died within the next few weeks. As the disease is contagious, he had to spend 2 months in isolation, and all in all, he was in the hospital in Russia for 6 months. During this time, doctors even considered removing parts of his lungs, but Thiago's mother and his wife were totally against this. They believed in Thiago's recovery and didn't want his football dream to end so soon. After 6 months, he went back home to Brazil to be treated there. He worked hard and the rest is history. Moments can often shape a whole life, in a good as well as in a bad way. And Fernando Torres also had to experience this firsthand, but his teammates made the right decision in a matter of seconds and thereby saved his life. In 2017, the Spaniard played for Atletico Madrid in the game against Deportivo La Coruña. But in the 85th minute, this fateful moment happened. Torres collided with a defender and fell on his head. He was unconscious and blood was running out of his mouth. Players ran to him and noticed that he was choking on his own tongue. They put him in a stable position and called for the doctors. It was completely quiet in the stadium. Everyone was aware of the seriousness of the situation. He was carried off the field on a stretcher and immediately taken to the hospital. And after a few hours, good news. Torres wrote on Twitter that he was fine and the football world was relieved. Zlatan Ibrahimović was not a particularly easy guy to play against. And at the beginning of his career, he narrowly escaped an attempt to kill him. In 2010, Peter Mangs was arrested in Malmö, Sweden. It turned out he had shot 2 people and had tried to kill 8 more. In prison, he began to write a book, and in this he wrote that he had a very prominent target. While he was walking in Malmö, he saw how Zlatan drove his Ferrari through the city and then parked it in the no parking zone. This made Mangs so angry that he went home to get his gun. He liked the idea that if he would shoot Zlatan on the street, he would become famous all over the world immediately. He came back, but then the Ferrari was gone. Zlatan had driven away a few minutes earlier. But how about this horrific injury that changed football forever? Goalkeeper Petr Cech was among the best goalkeepers in the world in 2006. The year before, his club Chelsea had won the Premier League, so in the next season the team wanted to repeat their success. On October 14, 2006, Chelsea played against Reading, but then a horrific moment in the first minute.
All the way through, giving the
Stephen Hunt hits Čech in the face with his knee. The goalkeeper was on the ground and got treated by the medical staff. He was responsive, but the doctors noticed that he was becoming more and more dazed. He was taken to the locker room and an ambulance had to come, but then Čech went unconscious. When he woke up, he couldn't remember a thing. The doctors explained to him that he had a skull fracture and that they had rushed him into ER right after he arrived. He was lucky. The bone almost went deep into his brain, which could have killed him. 3 months later, in January 2007, he got back into training. However, the healing process of a skull injury can take several years. That's why Čech played the rest of his career with a helmet. And today he's fighting for more safety for goalkeepers. Football players like Neymar are often fouled, but that's normally not life-threatening. However, some footballers often endanger their lives through their own fault. Hey, our favorite football players make a lot of money. And what do you do with that? You buy a fast car. And Neymar did so too. In fact, he has plenty. But during his time at Barcelona, he drove too fast. Fortunately, he was able to get out unhurt, but Sofiane Keïne nearly lost his life from speeding. The 25-year-old Moroccan had spent a few years in the Italian league and was sold by Lazio to Belgian club Leuven in 2022. In March 2023, he was driving his car and drove into a roundabout with about 124 miles per hour. The car flew in the air with high speed and crashed through the walls of a sports hall, creating a huge hole in the building. He was immediately taken to the emergency room. Miraculously, Sofiane wasn't seriously injured, and luckily there weren't any children in the building either, as they had left the hall a few minutes earlier. Whew, lucky. You know what I think? Sofiane was probably distracted because he was watching our video on his phone. That's why you better subscribe, then nobody will get injured. And for everyone that is subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Raúl Jiménez was also lucky in a bad situation, because this injury not only affected his career, but his life. The Mexican striker had played for Wolverhampton in the Premier League since 2018, and that very successfully. But on November 29, 2020, in the game against Arsenal, this happened. David Luiz and Raúl accidentally banged their heads against each other, and Raúl fell unconscious on the ground. He regained consciousness in the hospital with a fractured skull and internal bleeding. He had literally just barely escaped death. The doctors said it was a miracle that he survived it all. Some medics advised him to retire, but he tried to recover, and then after almost a year, he was back on the pitch for Wolverhampton. Now he wears a padded headband for his own protection and continues to score goals in the Premier League with great success.
Coming back in, it's Raúl Jiménez! Finally!
Also, the Dutch player Daley Blind can look back on a successful career, but it almost ended in a tragedy. It is December 10th, 2019. Blind is playing in the Champions League with Ajax Amsterdam against Valencia. During the game, he was feeling extremely dizzy, and after the game, he got himself checked out. The diagnosis? Heart problems. He got a pacemaker that uses electrical impulses to regulate heart rhythm and hence prevent cardiac arrest, but in 2020 the shock. During a friendly game in pre-season, the Dutch fell on the ground, his pacemaker got active. He left the field, but he was fine. And if you want to see 15 of the most heartbreaking moments in football, then watch this video.